Perfect. Okay. So hello everyone, my name is Allison and I work on the Youth Initiatives team here at SAIT. And today I will be speaking with Ian Rice. So Ian is a welder, a gas fitter, and an artist. Ian has a very interesting and intriguing career journey. So we're just gonna kind of jump right into the questions and let him tell us all about it. So welcome Ian, thank you so much.
Thank you, hi.
And so just to start us off, can you please tell us about your career path history, and is it in line with what you wanted to do or what you thought you'd be doing when you were in high school?
Absolutely. My career and what I'm doing today is absolutely nothing like I thought I would be doing in high school. It took a real turn after high school when I got a travel bug and just started touring around Europe. I ended up staying there for about 4 years. And when I came back, I was slightly aimless. I didn't pursue what I'd studied in college at all. I went in for advertising because I thought I wanted to do creative stuff, and that was a broad enough base for me. It turns out I wasn't into that at all. So I kind of took a step back, and then I ended up falling into the trades by accident. And that's what brought me to SAIT. I met somebody who just needed an apprentice who would show up to work and could just hold the other end of something heavy. And that was for sure me. So I got it indentured for that. I got indentured for plumbing and gas fitting. Through all that, I stayed creative. And I just kept doing what kind of inspired me in tiny little sections, and eventually I ended up getting a job with Beaker just as like a site manager. It was just kind of dumb luck. I was still doing my trade at the time, and I was able to just learn a little more about the art world through Beaker. I was set up at SAIT with somebody else's sculpture. And it was at that time that we were making our own first sculpture. Making a sculpture, I was able to incorporate a countless number of things that I'd learned in my trade. I think maybe we'll get into that in a little more detail though in a bit. But that was kind of my roundabout way into falling into the art world, was first falling into the trades and kind of acquiring all these practical skills that I could then infuse into my creative brain and practices. Very
cool. So now, what do you currently do?
Right now I'm doing my trade. Even though for a little bit I took 2 years off, not even a year ago. So last December I got back into work after not working for 2 years and just doing art. But right now I'm practicing what I studied at SAIT. I'm doing plumbing and gas fitting, and I'm working at the Cancer Center expansion here in Calgary.
Very cool. Very cool. That is, I love how broad of a range it is, you know, art versus plumbing. It's very cool. That's awesome. And just for kind of our viewers, can you explain what Beaker is?
Absolutely, yeah. Beaker was this really neat brainchild of a couple Calgarians, and it infuses science and art, and its focus was always more science than art, but it found a way to put them together in a really presentable way. For their first longest time, they were just in individual installations around Calgary that would encourage people to kind of get out and see the city at the same time as they were trying to find these creative pieces that were all over the place. Most recently, they've kind of brought everything into one place. Last year, they had it at Prince's Island, and it was kind of this big show of. They're going a little more towards the art stuff now, I think, but it had always been a science-based art festival, so to speak.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so now just moving on to our next question. Can you describe a typical kind of day in the life of you? So what kind of time do you wake up? Do you have like a morning job, an afternoon job, night job?
Sure.
What do you do on a daily basis? Do you work with a lot of people? Kind of paint us a little picture.
Sure, absolutely. You're not gonna like this, but 4:30 is typically when I'm up. We start at 6. I've always been an early riser, so that wasn't really an issue for me. But some people take a serious uh, issue with that. But so we're up early, typically working on site before the sun's up. Um, on site right now, there's over 1,000 people, but it's so spread out that in my little area, there's only typically about 10 of us. We go in and we kind of do like a safety talk and a plan for the day. Um, there's a lot of paperwork these days in the trades. It's kind of people covering their butts as far as liability goes, because it's a high risk environment. So we kind of safe out the whole area and we talk about our plan for the day, and then we go and do it. We got our blueprints always there, so it's just kind of like, here's the print, make the pipe look like that. I loved it. It was always a way for me to kind of incorporate my perfectionist ideals, and make things look really nice when you're building them from scratch. And also for me, it's a neat way to kind of leave my mark on things. I feel really proud in this one and also every other job that I've done to be a part of something like that. I've worked on like the biggest variety of jobs across Canada with my trade tickets, and it's neat to build something that you know is going to last, that you would take pride in and feel so confident that you might hang your own vehicle from. And it's just like it's neat to be a part of something like that.
That's
So,
fantastic. Can
yeah.
you describe like one project in particular that you worked on that you were kind of extremely proud of, or is there one that kind of stands out to you?
Sure, yeah. Brookfield Tower was one of the more recent ones. Their big claim to fame was just being a few feet taller than the bow. Um,
I think I heard about this. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It was a real back and forth for a while.
Yeah.
But I really got a lot out of that one because I went onto site when it was just a hole in the ground, and I put in what was essentially the lowest of the pipes in the whole place, all the underground that was 7 stories below street level, and then piped that into cisterns that would collect the water or whatever. I set up the pumps to pump that out. I stayed on that project for 4 years, and I spent a year working in the penthouse, which is the mechanical room. So I got to work. I basically got to do everything on that job, from when it was a hole in the ground to when they were putting the crown on the top, and um, and I just felt like it was quite an accomplishment, for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Uh, it felt really good, to walk away from that one and do something like that and be part of it.
That is so amazing because even kind of going off track, even when I go downtown and see all these massive buildings, it is kind of hard to picture how many people are needed and how much communication you need between people and different trades and skills and expertise that you need to create these amazing huge buildings, right?
Oh,
So
it's insane! It's insane. I'm learning so much as I go, and it's neat. I actually, I don't know how to incorporate this into our talk, so I'm just going to bring it up
yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yesterday, I got a new job, and it's actually what they call a trade specialist. So for the first time in my whole life, I'm moving into an office job, where I'm kind of a liaison between the people putting in the pipes and the engineers designing it. So I'm supposed to be this in between person. They're rolling out the project in Calgary, hoping to make it a national thing. So it's kind of a huge step for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Congrats.
I, I would thank you, but I wouldn't have any chance at that job if it weren't for the creative side of what I do, and and then like the little bit of knowing my way around a computer program.
Yeah.
Um, but through art, I've been able to have a real grasp on blueprints and how to kind of extrapolate a 2D drawing into a 3D vision. And thankfully, with that skill set, I was able to impress enough people to take this new role on. So that's kind of another example of like you have no idea what you're getting into when you get into, in my example, a trade, it's so huge. Like just the base is so massive. What you study as you kind of specialize and get into all like the little bits of info that you can, and you learn these different areas, you could just go after something that was, I mean, in your overall course load at SAIT, it was just one little book. You could make a career of that. So I think it's really cool now that I'm getting to incorporate other things into my trades. So there's this huge back and forth between bringing the trades into my creative life and then bringing my creative life into the trades. It's just this really cool dichotomy.
Very, very cool. And it's something that honestly, I don't think anybody's ever seen the parallels there. You know, I don't think, for me, I've never kind of related the two, right? So,
oh, totally. A lot of people kind of, it's a bit of a misnomer that it's grunt work. You do have to kind of enjoy getting dirty, at least for the few years when you're going through your apprenticeship. You got to kind of take on whatever crappy job they want to throw your way and have a good attitude about it, because that's kind of the only way that you're gonna make an okay name for yourself. But once you start being established in the trade, yeah, it just seems like there's a jump off point to so many little offshoots that you don't even imagine when you're just learning it. I couldn't have ever pictured myself taking the role that I just took, writing and sending in my resume to do it. Even I was doubting myself, but going through the interview process, I kind of started feeling like, yeah, maybe this would be a good fit for me. I'll never know until I try. So there's been a lot of that. There's been a lot of challenges, and then rising to the occasion, and then you come out the other side like, oh wow, I know this.
yeah.
I mean,
No, that's fantastic. Congratulations. That's huge. That's amazing. And
thanks.
and yeah, it kind of feels like I'm getting the sense that you kind of took took the path at the time that interests you kind of the most. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
very much so. Yeah. Even like when I said I took a couple years off to do art, that's what that was. I was a little, I think I was a little burnt out with the trade. By that point, I'd worked in 3 different provinces, kind of back to back to back. I hadn't taken any time off in years. I was a little tired, and we were doing the art really, really heavy in all of my nights. I would get off work and go to the garage, and we would try to build. This guy.
Very
So
cool. I was gonna say.
so I was just like, man, you know what? I just want to do this, and so I did it. A couple years later, I realized that I could strike up a better balance. So I went back to work, and I, even with that, I felt great about it. I felt so good, kind of nervous, but really good stepping back onto site after 2 years, knowing that having these tickets in my pocket that I got from SAIT would enable me to make these choices in my life. Like, maybe I'll go do this, but I could come back and I could earn the money that I'd left. And I wasn't falling down any ladders. I didn't have to claw my way back to the top by any means. I could just take some time off and do what appealed to me, and then go back.
Right.
And that's another beauty part about what I do.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear as well, because I'm assuming that there is a high demand for your type of work.
There is. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was told the whole time, is that I would never be out of work. And actually, as I'm progressing in the trade, I'm seeing fewer and fewer people getting into it, as opposed to the many more people getting out of it. Lots of people retiring from the trade. And it's too bad to see, because I would be, it's super cliched, but I would be nothing without this trade. For something that I never anticipated doing, I couldn't imagine now not having done it. And I just think of that from a practicality standpoint, like I can fix all these things in my house and not have to call anybody, to even having a secure job that, in my opinion, and it is a bit of a narrow view, but I feel like my job can never be automated. I just think I could never be replaced. There's so much troubleshooting and on-site kind of workarounds that have to happen. There's so much coordinating with all the other trades and other people involved and doing their thing around you when you're just trying to do your thing. I feel really secure in my having worked for as long as I could possibly want it. With that being said, there's a lot of moving around. So you do kind of have to be adaptable. You know, like the company that I'm working for today might not stay steady for as long as I would like for them to. But at the same time, there's always gonna be people starting new buildings. It seems like there's too many people that make money off that for that to ever slow down, and they need us to make that happen. So I do feel confident in my work for sure.
That's great to hear. Yeah. And is there anything that made you choose this specific trade as opposed to something else?
So getting into plumbing and gas fitting was kind of dumb luck. Just through the people that I'd met and the connections that I made, that's what opened the doorway for me to this. But then once I was in, I did start meeting people and learn that I could jump around, and if I wanted to, I could pick up other trades, which I've done in the pipe fitting realm. But I always stuck to the pipes. Something about that appealed to me more. I think I can't say that it's the workforce, but like for some reason I did always kind of see eye to eye with the pipe fitters and the plumbers. It's almost impossible for me to explain how that dynamic works. Intertrade personalities kind of, but I think I always it was either this or electrical for me. I just found that these were the things that I could just apply to so many different areas in my own personal life and benefit from on a more personal level, that I knew that would be what I wanted. That being said, as I was going through my apprenticeship, I wasn't even convinced that I would stick with the trade. All I knew for sure is that it wasn't a dead-end job by any means, which I was kind of in a cycle of working dead-end jobs, at least things that I didn't see. I could see the ceiling and it was right here. For the trade, it was kind of like sky's the limit, but I wasn't really convinced. I'd never intended on being a plumber, and it didn't always speak to me even when I was studying it. So all I was committed to doing was just sticking it out 4 years, going to state all 4 years, getting my tickets, because once you have those people, they can't take them away from you. You're ticketed, you're licensed, you can now do that and ask for a certain level of money and respect, maybe. But you could do that, and so I knew for sure that I was going to stick with it for 4 years. That was all I was committed to. Now it's been 15 years that I've been doing the trade. There's really no looking back. Like I said, I'm kind of moving towards the next step in the trade, which is a little more managerial. But even that, I mean, I was looking into it, and at state, you could pursue your blue seal. Now that I've got my red seal in these trades, you could actually chase a blue seal and get your business kind of more with your business management side of things. And I just feel like it's such a huge sphere that you're entering when you step into that kind of world.
Can you explain what the blue seal is as opposed to the red seal?
For sure. So the red seal is an interprovincial seal that says you're qualified to work across Canada. You're recognized as a skilled and competent journey person. You've done the studying, you've passed, you've proven yourself, and now you should be able to kind of be handed minimal information to make sense of it, especially in relation to the codes. There's a national plumbing code for me. And so it's kind of, you know the books, and then you know how to apply them. And then the blue seal, the blue seal is neat because it's kind of, you could put it together almost like patchwork, do some night courses if you don't want to stop working, because that's another huge commitment that people can't necessarily do. And then, so you start putting these courses together, and once you've amassed enough of that education, then you get another seal, which is also recognized coast to coast, and it's that now you're in a little more of a better position to run a business. So those courses involve sometimes accounting. They're kind of much more back end stuff, and things that maybe the typical tradesperson doesn't always think about, but a company couldn't possibly run without. So it's kind of getting you attuned to thinking in a little more of a managerial scope.
Very cool. That's an interesting kind of bridge that SEAL provides too, right, between kind of the business side and the trade side. So it kind of feels like it's connecting the disconnect of the two worlds. So very cool.
Where you're not just kind of a worker bee. You could yourself one day be queen bee, and it's not out of the question.
Yeah, very, very cool. Okay. Sorry, I kind of went rogue there and was just asking.
No problem. Good to go off the cuff sometimes.
And so, have you always, like even in high school, were you very kind of artsy as well? And
Yes, definitely more artsy than practical in high school. There was a spell where all I wanted to be was an architect. That kind of lasted from like 7 years old to 17 years old. And I just never got there. I actually had friends that got there, and I can't even say that I'm envious, honestly. I just get a lot from being in the fresh air, and sometimes just not even knowing what to expect during the day, which is any job. But I always got a lot out of the trade that I wouldn't give back for any of those other opportunities. Architecture appealed to me, drafting appealed to me. Basically, it was any way to spend my time drawing lines and just like doing something that I thought was creative while constructive. And then I applied to college for graphic design and creative advertising, and I ended up getting in for advertising, and then I didn't pursue it, and I was kind of like, maybe creative's not for me. I was always kind of hung up on the starving artist persona and not wanting to do that myself. I never really liked the idea of starving and sacrificing for your art, which I later on appreciated the value of, and did it for a little while to try it out. But I mean, I went back to working, realizing that you can be creative and you can be employed. And you can, if you could find a balance, then you can do both those things successfully.
Right.
So nowadays I'm planning on doing the work, unless my art really takes off.
Very cool. Yeah. Do you sell your art?
No. So we dabbled with the idea. We're going to get into selling it, I think, because so what we've done, we started super small. And then if we ever made money, say through Beaker Head, or we were set up at the TELUS Spark for a weekend, we did the University of Lethbridge when they opened their new science wing. There's been these kind of little gigs that we were able to score that kind of paid for the propane, didn't net us a lot of money because we're still pretty modest in what we ask for. But any money that we got, we sunk back into ourselves. So we did just buy a new tool that'll allow us to do all our cuts with a computer program cutting it. So we got a CNC table, and basically we take a plasma cutter that we used to cut the metal with, and then we hardwire it into the CNC table, which then does programmable cuts. And now we're thinking about selling stuff. We can go to market with things that we make now because we could just make little things that are much more accessible. The dragon was actually our first sculpture. So that was our first metal piece ever. I got into metalwork and welding and fabricating at work. In the downtime, I would just start making things, and that's kind of how I even ventured into metalwork. I shouldn't have been, but I tried making throwing stars and things of that nature, and got some serious flack for doing that. but through that realized like, wow, I really like cutting into metal. That's a really neat feeling. I like buffing it at the end, so it's super shiny. That looks cool. Welding is amazing. Turns out you could pretty much make anything. I thought, yeah, it just it seemed like, wow, like nowadays, if I could draw that, we could make that. So like our other piece, which I got to send pictures of, which was like this six-headed Mario plant that spits fire in all the different directions. That was just a drawing. It was kind of, and same with the dragon. It was a drawing on the garage floor. It's like, what does a dragon head look like? And from the top view, for me, it looked like a strawberry. From the side view, it looked like I used to draw dinosaurs. And then we were like, yeah, okay, we can make this. And we kind of broke it down piece by piece. And but it was only through like learning to fabricate that we even thought any of this was doable.
Right. Right. So what's your primary kind of mode of art? Like what materials do you use? What is it like? It's not paint. I'm trying to see it. It's not.
Yeah,
It's like a.
it's tricky to see. So where is it? There it is. So with that, it's all buffed metal. So it started as sheet metal, and then we buffed it to make it a lot brighter. Sorry, I'll get you closer.
Yeah, no, amazing. It's so detailed.
Yeah, so we cut every scale individually, and there's over 1,000 scales.
Oh,
The reason that they're cut individually is because we folded them like pockets, and the whole dragon is lit up from the inside. So at night, it actually shimmers down the metal with these lights that you can't see. And then I would love to say that metal was my main medium. And I am learning kind of different things that I can do with it. I learned how to build these 3D roses that I torch them until they're red hot. And then I start bending them with pliers and make like a full rose with like crinkled petals and everything. It's
wow.
like hyper detailed and super fun. Like on that one, I literally feel like I'm doing God's work. But still, I'm kind of still super grassroots. It's pen and paper for me. If we get anything that is like super inspiring, I just draw some rough blueprints for us. But it's always been pen and paper for me. It still is. It's like markers. I'm drawing a big canvas right now. Just a bunch of deer heads and plants and stuff around it. I will literally draw anything. I think I'm an okay artist, but I have way too many people that I admire to think that I'm an awesome artist. I think that humility will keep me good in my head. And one thing, I was laid off from plumbing and gas fitting one time between a couple jobs, and I decided that because that's the thing, that's just kind of a certainty in our trade, is that at some point you're going to be working yourself out of a job, and until the next one starts, you might have to take a layoff. When that happened to me one time, I decided that I was going to teach myself Photoshop. So that was a good way for me to maybe take a drawing that I'd done and was happy with, but was not going to do anything except for sit on my desk, and then make it into something else. Since then, I've gotten more into, I started my own graphic design shop. Right now I'm doing stickers, logos, posters for all types of bands. I mean, shows don't happen anymore, so that really put a hindrance on that. But I'm still working with a lot of crews out of Toronto who are putting out records and stuff. And I found that was a great way for me to take a 2D piece of art, and even if I'm just like coloring it digitally now, I can always hit Control Z if I hate that color. Whereas before I was actually pretty shy to color things. I love my line work, but I hated coloring. And because I would get a little lazy with my coloring and maybe not see it right through to the end, and then be like, oh, this looks bad. And so nowadays I take my drawings and I'll just draw them up black and white, and then it's as easy as taking a picture of it, emailing it to myself, bringing it into Photoshop, and then now I'm coloring it and shading it and doing all these things to it, and then taking something that I drew and using it for like I said, like a poster or an album cover or something. It was this cool way to bridge kind of this dead end passion of mine, which was just making stuff. And if I wasn't giving it away, I wasn't doing anything with it. I would never sell my drawings. Um, but now I've figured out a way to do more with them.
Very cool.
Mm.
Very interesting. Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I was kind of eyeing that the art behind you too, so I'm glad that that got brought up. So very cool. Um, what was the very first thing you created as an artist? This might be a hard question because you've been kind of
It was. It was. I was thinking of that earlier because I didn't want to say a mess. Although I think people should be proud of whatever messes they create at the start if they're expressing themselves. Um, I remember making, and it's funny, I remember taking a lot of pride in my paper airplanes. I had a real, I think, panache for making a plane that could do some serious stuff. And I learned how to trick out paper airplanes, and I would draw on my planes. And I think, yeah, between paper airplanes and just my drawings, my parents were always super supportive of me. So we got to see my work all around the house in its most amateur form. And we still do. My first painting, my parents still have it on their wall.
That's
It's pretty
amazing. That's so good.
bad. It's bad, but it's good. Yeah.
That's awesome. Have you had to ever travel for any of your jobs? And if so, where to?
Totally. So as a plumber gas fitter, I've worked in the most remote parts of Ontario, up around James Bay, right where Ontario meets Quebec. We were way, way out in the bush. I was working at a gold mine there, and it was wild. So many parts of that looked like a James Bond movie. They had the biggest trucks on the planet there. They had the biggest scoops on the planet. They were digging an open mine that the pit was actually, I forget how many hundreds of meters deeper than the CN Tower was tall. There was all, I mean, between that, I worked in Saskatchewan. I worked in Fort McMurray. I worked in northern BC. And then I've worked in a few different cities along the way. But those camp jobs for me were kind of the most eye-opening as to what we do, because when you travel, it's just in my opinion, you're only as good as your experience. So you could be a plumber just like me and just work in town and never ever have a chance to see any of these things. I got a lot from that. That was actually the first job that I did when I got my ticket officially, was go to Saskatchewan, because I thought, sweet, I'm a journeyman. I'm gonna journey, and so off I went, and then from there it was Ontario, and then I kind of worked back west. But it was such a rush, and it was neat to be a part of even that. And then with the art is what I'm really hoping will take me somewhere. Maybe I'll plumb when I get there.
Yeah.
But we have some friends who are doing some really cool stuff for some really rich people in the United Arab Emirates. And it turns out people in Dubai absolutely go nuts for fire sculptures. And that's what we're trying to build. For me, fire sculpture is where it's at. It kind of incorporates everything that I'm good at, which is imagining something, then following it through to build it. There's metal work, and then the biggest piece is the fire that it spits out. It's just, there's something primal about fire that gets everybody kind of like woo, and then also at the same time, I know how to do it safely. Our sculptures are interactive. Both this one and the plant rely on people to play with them, or they don't do anything. So for the dragon, just out of the picture is its tail, and its tail kind of pops up out of the ground and then loops back, and there's a big red button on the tail. When you hit the button, it spits the fire.
No.
And so same with the plants. The plants, they had tongues that hang out of their mouth. 3 of them did. And when you hit the tongue, it's on a spring. Under the spring is a sensor, And when it hits the sensor, it opens something in the mouth, and that shoots the gas past the little pilot flame that we have burning all the time, and that's what makes the fireball. So interactive fire art is like, that's my jam right now.
That's so crazy. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, I know. I didn't really know either until I went to Burning Man.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So can you walk us through like from like idea to like creation? Can you walk us through the whole process of how you create something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think collaboration is key. So I kind of have to touch on that first, because without that, none of it would happen. My build partner, Kyle, I mean, it's just the two of us. Some people have these huge teams, but the collaborative piece was the biggest part for us ever getting off the ground, because people bring different strengths. I'm full of whimsy, as he would put it, but my ideas could get us in trouble, let's say. So he's a really calculated and methodical person. I'll pitch ideas past him all day, and he'll just be like, no, no, definitely not. And
Too dangerous.
yeah, yeah. And for me, that's really important.
Yeah.
Because I could come up with these crazy things all day. But once he helps me narrow it down as to like, cool, that's a good idea. We can do that. Then it's like, okay, how realistic is this? So we might have a bunch of ideas. We did on the last one. We had several ideas, but one seemed a little more doable. So we kind of boil it down from all of our ideas, and it takes a long time to even get those ideas together, because you're just kind of pulling in different things that inspire you from your day to day, things that you see other artists doing, or things that you just see in the normal world, and you're like, I could make that shoot fire, and for us. So once we kind of boil it down to this is the idea that we want to pursue, then we start drawing it out. We kind of have to come up with a timeline. Typically, we're doing our art on a deadline, because our goal every year is to bring it to Burning Man, and that happens at the end of August in Nevada. So for us, it's like, okay, timeline. Is this realistic? Can we build it this quick? Is that going to leave us any time to have a normal life? Typically not, but that's okay. And then, so if we think it's doable, then we kind of start sourcing out our material. Everything that we do, we pay for ourselves. We go in the hole doing it, and then we try to recoup those costs through little gigs that we might book. So we'll kind of source out all of our stuff. We'll see where we're going to get our metal from. We have to get, for us, for our sculptures, we have to get sheet metal, we have to get metal rod, we have to get metal tubing to like do basically we build a skeleton. So what we've done in our sculptures so far is we almost do a wireframe, and we have an outline built out of steel. And it's kind of like the skeletal frame of what goes on. The dragon was just like that. It was just like ribs all through it, and the spine. So we look at where we're going to get our material, how realistic is it cost-wise, once we go over the timeline and stuff. For us, another factor is the size of the things that we're making. How can we scale them up or down? We built the dragon and the plant in a 1.5 car garage, even though the dragon's over 10 feet tall and the plant's over 13 feet tall. So for that, then it had its own issues with, we're not building it to stay in one place. We're actually building it to travel with. So everything has to be able to be compartmentalized. So with the dragon in particular, the back, the whole shell of the back with the spikes on it comes off, and then you can step right inside it. The sides come off. Each wing comes apart in 3 pieces. Everything that we have come apart, we have to then be able to on site put together. It all goes together with bolts. And so nuts and bolts, it'll just like slide in, put all the nuts on. Okay, that's in place. And then, so we're basically building like a 3D puzzle as well. So it's like a lot of breaking it down. It's a lot of mental processing as to how are we going to do this, because there's no I mean, there's no blueprint apart from what we're designing, and we're not that great in the design realm. So we're figuring it all out on the fly. We're figuring out how do we want to make it come apart and go back together. So then once we think we've got it all dialed in, we typically have how it's going to go together, how the pieces are going to fit, and then we skin it out. So we've got kind of a skeletal frame built, and then with the dragon, we had to figure out what we wanted the scales to look like as opposed to the head. And I mean, like even the eyes light up. So we got to figure out where we're going to source our stuff from. For the dragon, for the eyes, we are such simple folk that we have an LED light, and then we got a magnifying glass that's kind of a semi-sphere that people read small print with. And so we literally epoxied that onto the light, and in between, we literally cut our own pupil. And since the light in behind was too bright still to see the pupil, we just put a couple sheets of tracing paper in between, sandwiched it all together. Now the effect is amazing. You can literally see that pupil from anywhere you look because the spherical shape of the glass above it. So much of it still and always will be trial and error, and elements of like luck, and just like another piece of it is constant failing. You have to be okay with failure. So we would often have an idea, work sometimes days down that path to just realize that that's going to fail. And then we'd have to work our way back. We'd salvage whatever metal we could so our costs didn't go way up. And then we'd have to rework that piece. So we'd start thinking about it again. And how are we going to approach this? And if it's not doable, scrap it. Just keep moving forward. There's nothing but workarounds. You got to find the joy in them.
Right. I feel like this is a good leadway into this next question. Do you have any advice for like young artists, or is that the advice?
That is part of the advice. Yeah. For sure. I think if I could give any advice, I definitely don't know it all. And I'm only gleaning what I can off of life itself and other people that I run into along the way. But I think what I've learned is just try to stay creative as you can, and make things, whether they're big or small. Just do things to keep those juices flowing. But realize that at some point you're probably going to have to put it down, unless you're really, really pushing hard, and you might have some backing, or maybe you're exceptionally talented. It's not just those people who are backed and is exceptionally talented that can make it as an artist, but I think the other people and almost everybody, they've got to realize that there does have to be a balance between work and play, so to speak. For me, the biggest lesson that I learned was you can always be creative, but sometimes different your priorities have to shift. So for me, I had to kind of put the creative stuff aside and get more into I'm going to go to work every day so I can eat and keep a house. And so it was a matter of accepting that you can put it down, with acknowledging that you never have to give it up. I never gave up the pursuit of wanting to do creative things. I stuck at it, because I couldn't quit. I couldn't quit wanting to make things. When I was on lunch, I would draw, and like I said, if I had some downtime, I would make something, and it was always kind of pouring out of me. I think it's important to recognize if it's doing that. Don't limit it. Like don't try to shut that off. Let that live, but just figure out how you could do it in a healthy way, with a healthy balance, while doing the things that I think make a person a contributing member of society.
That's such a good kind of overall picture of your passion versus a realistic kind of point.
That's exactly it. Yeah, like you could be the most passionate homeless person. It just might not be that enjoyable.
Yeah. But it's true, like in the event that something does take off, you can make the sky's the limit
Absolutely.
kind of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't feel pigeonholed in any way. Um, and I'm happy that I kept at it, because none of the things would be happening if I hadn't. I worked beside a lot of people who gave it up entirely. A lot of people who maybe were right there with me, but then decided like, that's for kids, or all of these kind of ideas that just don't support being creative. They're quite limiting. And I just feel like don't limit yourself like that. If you can avoid it, sure, go to work every day. But if you can draw on a napkin and you can find something that you like to get out of you, then I would say do that as much as you can too.
Totally. I think it's so important to not give up kind of the things that are important to us, right? And
Yeah,
that you
totally.
get enjoyment from, right? So,
Yeah, the stuff that excites us.
yeah,
That's like the zest of life.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so if a person was to, just kind of going back to the trade side of things, if
Yeah.
somebody wanted to get into plumbing or gas fitting, what skills would they need or interests would they have to have, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think a general interest in math isn't a bad thing. You're basically going to be only working with numbers, and unless you have like a real kind of brainless task. You're always crunching numbers, even if it's just to figure out what is one end to the other. Um, so, I mean, a healthy enjoyment of math is one thing. I think self-motivated is an important skill to kind of have and be. There's not always going to be people there to shove you forward and be like, hey, are you staying on task? And so being self-motivated is important because it's a very kind of hands-off management style in that area. People just want to see you doing stuff. They don't necessarily want to crack a whip. Um, and also, troubleshooting is, for me, probably the number one thing that we have to do. So having a bit of a problem solving strength or skill set, even an analytical mind. This is a lot of our work is trying to figure out, oh, geez, well, that's not going to work. How are we going to make it work? There's just so much problem solving in our day to day. It's almost unbelievable.
That's good to know. And so what kind of things does somebody who would want to be doing the art side of what you do kind of have? Obviously creativity, but is there anything else?
Yeah, creativity. Even the least creative people, I think, thrive in a good group. So if you can have some people around you that kind of bring out the best in you and make you come out of your shell a little bit, I think is the most important. You don't have to be the most creative, but if you're not too shy to speak your piece and maybe give your input, and because I think everybody's got something in them that is worthy, and would be great. So I think collaboration, and working in a group is a big thing. You can go smaller. I definitely wouldn't advise making what we make alone. But if that's not really for you and you just want to work on your own, I'd say determination is a big thing, and believing in yourself, because you don't have to think that you're doing it the best, but if you think that you should be doing it and that you can keep doing it and you don't let a little criticism get in your way, I think that you'll just do it. You'll be happy doing it. And a stick with it kind of attitude is only going to serve you well.
Totally. That's great advice. Earlier, I'm just kind of backtracking a little bit. Earlier, you said you guys did some gigs. Is that what kind of gigs are those? Is that like art classes or?
No, so we did we had bookings. So people would get a hold of us and say, can we kind of rent you and your dragon? We did one for Game of Thrones send off when they did their last episode. And
Wow.
that was when we were actually set up at Telespark. Um, and so what we would typically do is give them a cost to basically rent the dragon for 2 or 3 days. Um, and then in that, we have to incorporate how much gas we're going to burn. So there's a bit of a projection as to what our burnables are going to be costing us on that one. And then we have to incorporate travel into it, as well as what our time would be, because it can't function without us there. Just too many safety things to worry about. So we're there in case anything goes wrong and we have to shut off the emergency shutoffs. So it would be a booking like that. It would be something just for a little stint. Um, and for us, it's a great way for people to get to know us. Each one that we've done has typically led to another one. Um, and it was all definitely trending upwards until 2020.
Right. And then, yeah.
And now there's just no events.
Yeah.
And honestly, people don't want to hit the same button as other people. So I'm not too sure what we're going to do.
Yeah.
I was talking about, because we did almost get booked for an art walk that was happening on 17th Ave recently. And I was flirting with the idea of, well, we could make it a foot pedal, which we could absolutely do. It would probably take a few days worth of work to rework the wiring and actually fabricate a foot pedal that could take people's punishment. Because a lot of people think that things are built bomb proof. Even though we're just tinkerers and building them in our garage, people love coming up and like slamming on the button,
Yeah.
or just treating it like it means nothing to anybody.
Yeah.
So we would have to find a pretty heavy duty way of building a foot pedal, but I think that's probably the workaround that we're going to do if we do start getting gigs again,
Very
because I respect that people don't want to touch the same things.
right. Right. And this is just a great example of kind of a troubleshooting situation, right? You just have to
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Because we want to stay in the game. We want to be able to show our dragons. So we're going to do whatever we can to figure out the problem that's kind of keeping us from doing that.
Yeah, totally. We won't this is just kind of off the record, but do you have like a public Instagram that you would want to share or
Yeah,
anything?
yeah, totally. So for our builds, it's TNA Creations.
It's very cool.
And that TNA is short for True North Absurdities. So that's actually our website is True North. I think it's truenorthabsurdities.com.
Very cool.
The Instagram's really good because we've got a lot of progress shots in that from all of our builds. So people can see like inside the dragon, what that looks like. They can see inside the plant, the crazy gas manifold that I had to build to work all those flames at once. You can see the electrical, like in the plant, because it had more requirements than the dragon, there was just more happening inside. We have our own electrical panel inside. It's like a full-blown electrical junction box.
Wow.
So like we wired all that ourselves. It's just the things that we've taken on and then accomplished.
Yeah.
It's crazy because we don't know this stuff when we're going in. We just we're like, this is what it's gonna take, and then we figure out how to do that.
Very cool. That's amazing. What how this is it feels like such a niche kind of area of art. Was
It
there
is. It is.
was there something that you were like exposed to that you got into it or did it just kind of come
Yeah.
up? Oh.
No, 100% Burning Man. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So it's a thing. It's really hard to kind of pinpoint even what to call it, but it's definitely kind of an art-based festival. It happens in the desert in Nevada. It typically brings in about 100,000 people. It's the world's largest Leave No Trace event. So there's a huge emphasis on bringing out what you brought in. But Burning Man is unlike anything else in the planet. just because there's this huge collection of artists bringing massive sculptures and stuff there that you'll never see anywhere else. And it's on a dried out lake bed in the middle of nowhere. So the scale at which you have to build to even be recognized there is crazy. That's why we're taking on kind of all these big bites that we're not even too sure if we can chew. It's because we want to get noticed.
Right.
So, and that was part of the interactive piece. Burning Man has definitely kind of gone away. A lot of people are getting more into the tech. So like LEDs are crazy and their stuff can do all this. For us, we're kind of keeping it like it used to be in a lot of people's minds, which is just like fire and metal and the interactive piece to draw people in and make them involved. So it was 100% Burning Man. It was a group of artists actually that we helped. So we helped them build a project, said how cool it was. They were bringing it down to the desert. Said how cool it was. That was super neat. Thanks for letting us help. Man, I'd love to build something like that. And all it took was them saying, yeah, just build something. And then, so that was when we were like, oh yeah, we could totally build something.
Yeah. I don't know.
And that was literally what did it for us. It was not just the Burning Man, but it was also helping another group of artists, seeing a little bit how they did it and seeing how doable it was if you just broke it down and handled it step by step. And yeah, their encouragement.
Very cool. So yeah, I feel like this kind of goes to show that you were kind of like a yes man, and you just said yes to helping, and then you kind of got a lot out of it. So
very much so, yeah. That's actually kind of been my whole run through all of this creative stuff.
Yeah.
The guy that I work with now, he asked if I could design something like years ago when he first learned that I could draw. And when I did it, and I did it the way like we love it, we were going to make stickers. And then all of a sudden he was like, well, I'll buy a vinyl cutter. Then we can make all the stickers we want. We've been cutting stickers since then. Like it keeps being this thing where something comes my way, I'm probably not saying no. Because if it's creative, it's just this really cool chance to do something that I wouldn't otherwise have a chance to do. It doesn't always turn out smoking hot. Sometimes it's a flop. But even on those times, it's neat to go through that with somebody because you're always learning. Even on the failures, those are like the best lessons.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's fantastic. So those are all my kind of formal questions. I'll just kind of end off. Is there anything that you kind of want to share with our audience if you were their age and still in kind of high school? Any kind of advice that you want to give?
Sure, absolutely. Just don't limit yourself. Don't limit yourself to friend groups. I mean, just in that sense of like, this is what we do. I think it's unfair to your future and to even your present self to not give yourself the chances to try some of everything if you wanted to. And then also realize that there's a gigantic life past high school. And that if stuff's not really popping off for you right now, that is in no way dictating what's going to happen later on down the road, that you just never have any idea of the doors that could open up. If you just have a good outlook, if you just like, I just think perspective is everything. And it's really easy to get down on things, especially in high school and as a youth, and with all the factors and external kind of influences coming at us, it's really hard to get even down on yourself, your chances, things that are happening to you. Things feel really stifling. So yeah, I think just remember to, if it all seems like it's failing, just keep going and keep trying and do whatever you can do to just get through that section. And because you have no idea what the next one's going to look like and what it's going to bring.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. So that was awesome. Okay, I'll just end the recording now.